I'm just on the budget,
All right, Mr. Chairman, we are live.
just the 20.
Thank you, sir. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October 29th Litchfield Budget Committee meeting. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah.
Please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
And
and justice
justice
for all.
for all.
Okay, thanks, everyone. With that, we'll move into public input. I don't see anybody from the public on the WebEx. Is there anyone in the conference room tonight? I don't believe so, but I'll just confirm that. Nope. Okay, great. Then we'll close public input. There'll be another public input session at the end of tonight's meeting in case anyone does show up. Any review, changes, modifications, additions to tonight's agenda? Okay, hearing none. Moving into correspondence over the past week. So I do have a summary of correspondence and I'll just read them off. So I have several items here that happened on October 23rd. One request was from Mr. Hayes for gasoline usage that was submitted to the town. Another request on October 23rd was the meeting agenda circulation for this evening. October 23rd, an email from Michelle with voting summary from 10/22. There was some email exchange there. Another one from the 23rd was approved as amended minutes from both October 1st and October 8th. Michelle, we voted them on our last meeting and Michelle circulated those final minutes for publication. October 23rd, we also received the weekly budget report from the town hall. October 23rd, we received information from the Recreation Commission and the field bidding process and the results of that field bid that they've received. And then a couple things here on October 26th, earlier this week, we received a school expense report from Michelle. Thank you for circulating that. Again, on October 26th, we have an update for, I can read my own writing here. We had a request sent to the budget committee. I'll have to look into what that was. I can't read my own writing. I apologize. Another request here from October 26th, school review process, email from Ms. Harrison, and then October 29th, which was earlier today. I know Michelle sent a note for the status of both the October 15th and October 22nd minutes. They are not available yet, and we'll get to them hopefully by our next meeting. Nikki, anything else to add for correspondence that I may have missed?
I just had on the 23rd, with the weekly budget report, there was also the special fund balances and the September revenues.
Thank you.
Otherwise, you're good.
Anybody else from the committee have anything to add for correspondence? Nope. Okay. So we'll close correspondence. For minutes, as mentioned, we do not yet have the October 15th and October 22nd minutes, so we are currently up to date with our minutes, so no need to have any acceptance of minutes tonight. And with that, we'll move right into town business reports. Mr. Brown, did you want to just provide an update before we move into voting tonight?
No, I think I'm good this evening.
Okay, great. So with that then, I know last week when we met, we had we reviewed a series of town budgets. Tonight we're going to pick it up with Mosquito District, which is 4411.20. Any comments, questions, motions on Mosquito District? I will make a motion to reduce the general supplies line 610 by $99.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. My rationale for making that motion is it's been budgeted for the last several years and never used. So, and I'm going back to really 2014. Further discussion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote, please. Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Douglas?
Aye.
Ms. Forty?
Aye.
Mr. Leary?
Aye.
Let's see here. Mr. Hodgkin?
Aye.
Ms. Harrison?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Sun? Aye. Mr. Hayes?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Mr. Hayes, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Okay. I am an aye. I think Mr. Hayes must be having some audio challenges. That will pass 8-0. All right. Anything else on Mosquito District this evening? Nope. Okay. Moving into health agencies. This is 4415, please.
Andrew, I'm sorry I dropped off. I was an aye on that previous vote, that motion.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll record that as 9-0-0. Thank you. Any motions, updates on health agencies?
Andrew, I think you did the health agencies, I think we did them last week.
I don't think so. Was it under a separate item, Troy?
I don't know. I just
We
had,
did vendor.
I had health
We did
agencies.
vendor payments.
There's not, it's by committee anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I just put the notes above the vendor payments.
Okay. Any motions or actions on health?
Oh, that's gonna be a warrant article, right? So-
Yes.
And at that time, we'll see what the requests are, so.
That's correct.
Okay.
No,
Thank
I've
you.
done no suggestions.
All right. Insurance then. We'll move into 419690. Getting there myself. There we go. Okay. Any motions? Hearing none, we'll move into general government facilities. This is 419410.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to reduce line number 635 by the amount of $4,500.
Interesting. I'll second it for discussion.
All right. We have a motion by Mr. Hayes. We have a second by Ms. Douglas. Discussion.
Yes, the budget to me seems, that was presented, I think it's going to be overfunded. All the research that I did with Mr. Brown's assistance on the gasoline delivery receipts for year-to-date 2020, that year-to-date is ending 9/30, shows that we are way below $2 per gallon. And also the embedded spreadsheet in the budget, which shows one complete calendar year starting July 1st, 2019, ending June 30th, 2020, shows our annual run rate at $2 per gallon. So even though it was reduced by the select team from $2.50 to $2.25, I think further reduction is warranted from $2.25 per gallon to $2 per gallon. So that's how I'm coming up with a $4,500 reduction.
Thank you. And so just to be clear here, right, if we take it down by $4,500, that will reduce the line to $36,000 even, correct? Is that your intention?
That is correct.
Okay.
Again, every indication is that if we're going to operate in 2021 with let's say even 6 months under a COVID-19 economy, and the second half of the year with 100% back to normal economy, we're still operating at about $1.82 per gallon. So what I'm doing is just being very cautious to make sure that we're not under budgeting that line by raising it to $2 per gallon and also giving back some to the taxpayer.
Thank you. Interested in committee thoughts?
I mean, how many cents is there per, was it 38 cents a gallon? So really 225 is 260 something? Is that what your thought process is, Mr. Hayes?
I'm not sure if I caught all that,
So,
but I will say that, go ahead.
yeah, I'm just trying to confirm the number. I mean, I should know this off the top of my head, but I don't. 38 cents per gallon, I believe, is the tax. Is that what we're factoring?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I understand. Yeah, the gas tax, the excise tax is 23.8 cents per gallon.
Uh-huh.
So, but you keep in mind, when you go by an urban station, you see $1.86.9.
Right.
You really are looking at about $1.63 per gallon as far as what the town would pay.
Right.
But again, that varies.
Right. No, so really, when you see 225 in the budget, it would be as if we, the consumer, were paying almost 250 a gallon. So do
That is
we,
correct.
so
Carrie,
do
that's
we
correct.
think that we will be paying 250 a gallon in the next year, I guess is the question. Yeah.
And I would suggest that we're not, because again, this COVID-19 is not going away anytime soon. And I've done the calculations during COVID period and before COVID period. So I'm very, very cautious when I take a look at the figures. And like I say, $1.82 is what's warranted, but I'm going up to $2 in my motion.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd just like to make a comment. I appreciate the due diligence that Mr. Hayes did on this. I certainly was a doubter when he first brought it up during one of the previous sessions, but he certainly won me over as far as his analysis.
Thank you for that.
I'll add, I do agree with Mr. Hayes' thought process and analysis, and because I think we've applied this logic when we've looked at seminars and conferences and mileage, anticipating that a good chunk of 2021, unfortunately might look a lot like 2020. The only thing that I think is slightly different with this particular line item is the unpredictability of this, because we do know that unforeseen natural disasters, even in a pandemic, could still potentially drive the cost of gasoline up. And that's the thing I want to make sure we're cautious about. I'm okay with a reduction here. I just, meeting somewhere in the middle of where we are to where Mr. Hayes is proposing could potentially be a better option.
You can amend it. You can offer an amendment.
Well, if I could add my thoughts as well, and certainly Mr. Sun, please feel free to make that motion. I am also very appreciative of Mr. Hayes, your analysis here. I know you've done a lot of research. You pulled all the invoices. You had, Troy really working hard over the past week to get all that done. So obviously I thank the town too for the diligence of pulling all that together. I also agree with Mr. Sun on this one, where I think, we really have to budget a little bit extra for the unpredictability of this line. Certainly we don't want to be without fuel, right? And I'm not suggesting that we ever would be in that scenario, given the bottom line budget at the end. But certainly I think a $4,500 reduction might be a bit aggressive, at least for my liking. Even if I were to look at 3-year averaging, which I really haven't done at this budget at all, we'd be at $38,122. And so that would warrant about a $2,500 reduction, not a $4,500 reduction, which I think I would feel a little bit more comfortable with.
That was actually where I was. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Mr. Tracy.
Yeah, I was going to say, before you, consider amending the motion, just, please understand that it really comes in at 182. So I am generous with the budget to the point that I don't want to underfund that line. So that's why I'm at $2. So I'm already adding buffer and extra in case. But we cannot predict hurricanes or anything else. We've been through several this year, and that didn't disrupt the supply, and the demand hasn't changed. So unless there's something really unforeseen, and I don't think we should put budgets together with too many what-if scenarios. I think we need to go historically, and I think we need to go based on the research.
I don't disagree with that. I know political risk certainly also falls into this one too, to an extent. So I'm just curious, Mr. Brown, what are your thoughts on this motion?
My thoughts haven't changed from the last time we talked about this. you know, when we first introduced this budget, I think you saw that we as a committee over the past few years have left it at $2.50 a gallon. This year, understanding that it's a tighter budget year, I took a look at this and I reduced it from 250 to 225. So again, the budget itself as a whole doesn't have a lot of capacity to absorb any unforeseen spikes in energy costs. So this particular line, it's really difficult to even predict how many gallons we're going to use per year. Every department's different. For example, if you take a look at the police department, which has 2 cruisers or maybe sometimes 3 on the road at any given time, I talked to Chief Sergeant about this line and saying, well, having the 2.5 officers that have been out this year, what kind of impact has that had on your patrolling? And definitely having those officers out has had an impact on the number of vehicles we have out there. So not only do we see us when we are at full capacity, we'll be consuming more fuel, and any large swings either way in this line, it's just a difficult one to budget. And that's, why we've, in the last few years, I come up with a spreadsheet for energy costs, the propane, the heating, the gasoline. And we as the budget committee selectmen, we've started to use that process. It's been working well. Mr. Hayes has done some great research, and he's basing that research on really some costs that I haven't seen in years. I just don't have the ability to forecast what's going to happen in the next 12 months.
All right, so let's consider for a second that we may be over budgeted for 2020. Based on the COVID-19, I think it's on the 1023 report, budget report update, we're at 24,600. So that's 9 months worth of data. So if you divide that by 0.75, you're at a run rate still of 32,000 some odd dollars for 2020. Is there an opportunity to give that money back to the taxpayer or put it in a fund to help augment what you consider may be an increase in 2021? And I'm saying, I don't think so.
I think, if I may just take that, right? So I think the town, along with the select board, have made decisions using that excess money, right? Because originally, before any purchases were made by the select board at the recent meetings and decisions regarding police cruisers were made, I was forecasting that we had about 250,000 at the beginning of this of saved money because of expenses and because of COVID changes to the budget that happened this year. But the town has already used, a good portion of that money, buying 2 administrative vehicles for the police, making $55,000 of pre-purchases, which now ultimately put us underneath the tax cap. There's still money in the budget, certainly. So, I would defer the rest of that question to the town.
Yeah, I think Mr. Carter is correct. So if this line, just like any other lines throughout the year, actually have a turn back, those funds are utilized either by the selectmen making a decision to make purchases for other items to cover other overruns in the budget, or it basically just lapses to the general fund. And then, as you've seen in the past, we've been able to use the general fund to make purchases for one-time capital expenses. So that's how it works. I mean, at the bottom line of this budget, any turn back of funds, that goes to the unassigned fund balance. And we have historically used those funds again to make one-time purchases, or we've used those funds to help make up for the loss or over expenditures in other lines.
So with that, are there any further comments, discussions on the motion at hand? Any amendments to the motion? Okay, hearing none, I'll bring it to vote. Mr. Taylor, please.
Aye.
Ms. Douglas,
I'm sorry, but I.
Ms. Forty,
No.
Mr. Leary.
No.
Okay, let's see here. Mr. Hodgkins,
Aye.
Ms. Harrison.
No.
No. Okay. Mr. Sun.
Aye.
Let's see. And I guess it's me, right? And I am also an aye on this one. So the motion carries. I'm sorry,
You
Mr.
wanna get the
Hayes.
vote?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes. You're down at the bottom of my screen. I missed you.
Thumbs up, aye.
Aye. Got it. So the motion passes 6-3-0. Okay.
Thanks, everybody, for a lively discussion.
Thank you for all your research. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, and thank you, Mr. Brown.
You're welcome.
Any other motions, updates, comments on general government facilities?
I'd like to
Okay.
make,
Oh, please go ahead.
would like to make a motion to reduce line item number 430, building maintenance and repair, by $1,788.
All right, I'll second that one. Please.
We have a
explain.
motion by Mr. Taylor and a second by Ms. Douglas. Discussion, please.
So when I take a look at, the past history over the last few years, there's been some very low years. Just concerned that that particular 35% jump is a bit excessive with a reduction in budget, but certainly if there is a certain repair or maintenance item that is a big ticket item that's justifying that 65.5, be happy to hear it.
Isn't that a decrease though?
Where are you seeing a jump?
So I think there was a jump between 2019 and 2020, but 2020 to 2021 looks like a reduction. Unless I'm looking at outdated.
This
ones.
is line 430, correct?
Yeah, we
Oh,
got,
I'm sorry, 430.
Yeah, 430. I mean, they took a 3-year average, which ended up being slightly.
I have a 3-year average of 43.29 versus Board of Selectmen approved 65.5.
I don't know that I'm looking at the same line. This is general government facilities.
I think Mr. Taylor's looking at line 630.
Yeah, I'm sorry, did I say
Oh.
something besides 630?
Okay.
All right.
I heard 430. I apologize.
Sorry about that. Okay, so you're saying.
Three-year average being 4330, 6550 is the request.
So this is one of those lines when we, during the start of this process, when the Board of Selectmen asked us to go back and take a look and do a zero-based budget, some of the areas in the budget, we had to do a 3-year average because there was no way to really identify what the cost would be. So we did 3-year averaging. 630, you can see we spent some time here trying to put numbers to the various types of repair and maintenance that we perform on buildings that are not captured in other departments. It's not just the town hall and the police department that we're covering with this line. The only capital reserve fund that we have to help assist with any major repairs does have limitations on it. The selectmen don't have total authority to access those funds. It's all depending on how much of a failure it is and whether or not, you can wait until you go back to the voters in March to appropriate funds. And that's one of the problems that we have with that capital reserve fund. It is a little bit restrictive in the use when we have certain unplanned maintenance issues.
So let me ask you a specific question then. If we look at HVAC maintenance, after the extensive work that was done this year for this particular building and a brand new fire station, do we really need to do $1,500 worth of maintenance on an HVAC system that just got revamped here and is brand new next door?
So this the fire department would have their own line for maintenance of their HVAC system. So this HVAC maintenance, $1,500 would go for, we have 6 units, heating units, 6 air exchangers, and we have 6 condensers out there on the ground. We also have 2 split units on this building. We maintain the old town hall now as well. That's got heating and cooling as well, equipment. Pumping the septic tank. So I don't know, $1,500 for a commercial service of the system, changing out filters 4 times a year, doing the spring and fall tune-ups, safety checks. I think that's a reasonable price. I don't know what a homeowner would pay for the annual check and filter change in their one.
Again, my big thing
Residential
was
unit.
we just recently had, an
Even-
extensive run through.
Even if you had brand new equipment, it's important that you still perform that annual maintenance, if not quarterly. So that's what that.
Yeah,
that's what
for
that-
my 1 unit, it's $350 for the year.
So
So,
is-
I don't think that's a bad number.
Is that a contract? Do we have like a contracted service for maintenance?
We don't, but we have been working with the current HVAC provider and trying to get a master
Like a service
contract so that capture all of our buildings.
Mhm.
You got the dog kennel, you got solid waste highway, and
You will never
so-
see me advocate against a
I know.
mechanical service contract.
Yeah.
I've been on the end of like, oh, we don't have one. Oh, great. Everything's trash. Start over. So I think it's very prudent to have a service contract. And if this is getting us to that direction, I think that's a good idea. Or if that's the intent of this line item, anyway, to eventually, currently maintain it, but work towards actually having somebody available to do that regularly. Because otherwise we start voiding the warranties of our brand new equipment and then we find ourselves in a worse situation.
Yeah, I think the other side of this conversation is, right, if I look back at 2016, we were at $2,600. 2017, we were at $5,600. 2018, we were at $3,100. 2019, $4,300, right? And certainly the maintenance got done each of those years too. So I guess that's the other side of it. Okay, further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll bring it to vote. Mr. Taylor,
Aye.
Ms. Douglas,
So this was a reduction for how much?
1,788.
No.
Ms. Forty,
No.
Mr. Leary,
No.
Mr. Hodgkins. Thumbs up? Thumbs up. All right, we'll count that as a yes. Ms. Harrison?
No, this is to make the reduction.
Correct.
No.
No. Okay. Mr. Sung?
No.
Let's see, and Mr. Hayes?
No, not on that one.
And I am also a no, so that one fails. 270. Okay. Any other motions or discussion on general government facilities? Okay, hearing none, we will move forward with Health Department 4411.
I think, is this going to be Doug or Frank that's going to? No, we're not present. I apologize.
Anyone?
Okay, health.
Yeah, I'm here if you need any questions answered.
Does the committee have any questions, motions, updates to the health department?
Not on this one for me anyway.
Okay, hearing none. We will move forward with ambulance 4215, please. Discussion, motions?
No. I'm just happy to see that it looks like the billing's in order. I feel like we've been discussing that for many, many years. So I'm glad to see that that's actually starting to come together. So thank you guys for your hard work and getting your arms around that and encouraging our neighbors who had been holding us up to actually do that in a more timely manner. So thank you. From a budgeting, it certainly makes it easier to budget when you don't all of a sudden get slammed with $50,000. So thank you.
I thank you. We started attending quarterly meetings with the town of Hudson, and Hudson reached out to us, to open that communication up, and it has worked.
Well, thank you for those efforts.
Okay, hearing nothing on ambulance, I'm going to move into fire administration, please, 4220.
So I noticed that on 410 and 411 that the comments still say estimate based on comparable buildings. Are we still developing our budget based on an estimate, or do we feel we have enough numbers to actually come up with a number that's more appropriate to our building?
And so Deputy Chief Nickel, this is specifically regarding electricity and heating.
Yeah, hold on 1 second, please.
Is Frank on? So he's fire.
Okay,
Fire administrator.
sorry. Okay, so Carrie, to answer your question, we pulled all the bills for last year because we obviously before that we had number one, the construction of the building, which used a lot of electricity, and prior to that we were in the old building. From January of this year on, we're averaging about $1,000 a month for electricity.
Okay.
I have all the actual numbers that I pulled through town hall, so I have every month's bill, and the average comes out to about $1,000.
Yeah, that seems to be what I saw in the reports that were recently sent, because I looked for the month of October. I just wanted to make sure that I know some comments tend to get forgotten about, and I know I was guilty of it myself. So I just wasn't sure if we were just still estimating or if there was actual numbers behind that. So thank you.
No problem.
Any motions, actions on the fire department? So I had a discussion with the chief about a week ago regarding some of the recommendations that I had listed in the Excel file. We spent about an hour together talking about some of these recommendations. Some were, agreed to. Some were really concerning to the chief. And so if you're looking at the file, right, I am not prepared to make some of those recommendations this evening. However, I am prepared to make a couple of them. So one of the ones that I'm going to make is regarding FD training wages, and this is specifically line 127 within the fire department. I'm going to make a motion to reduce that by $4,566.
Second.
We have a motion by myself, second by Ms. Douglas. Discussion being, this is one that I am setting to $50,000, which is still $5,000 above the averaging on this, and it still, I believe, allows the department to meet the needs of the new hires that they're anticipating on hiring, and also meeting the training that they want to achieve in the coming year. Any discussion? Comments?
Well, part of the rationale for some of the adjustments was that the wages had changed. There was increases, and therefore if you're paying based on a higher wage, needing a bit more funding for that, if I'm correct.
Yes, I agree with that. I don't know if Deputy Chief has a comment.
Nikki, to answer your question, yes. So the increases were merit-based, and it's also the average of the amount of people that come to our trainings. There was a time when we first started COVID, because COVID was an unknown. So from March until about May of this year, we did no training at all. And then after that, we started back and started training in very small groups. We are now currently back to regular training, but with everything that's happening, unfortunately, recently, we're probably going back to that small group training again for as long as we can, until such time as we may have to, again, put the brakes on training for a while.
Well, then if there's a chance that we're going to put training on hold for a little bit, then there's an opportunity that you're not going to fully spend the budget, because we're not going to achieve, we're just not going to have the hours available. So then I would.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so we're still trying. I mean, nobody has a good grasp on what's going to happen. I mean, the governor said he's trying not to shut anything down. We're going to train for as long as we possibly can, because we can't just train, on WebEx. We need to actually do physical training, and we're taking all the safeguards that we can.
Mm-hmm.
So we may be able to continue doing that training, but we don't know.
Right.
Okay, further discussion, please.
More of a question for the chief. Is it fair to say that the proposed increase in this training wages line item is most closely associated with the new member training that would be required of those new hires?
It's a combination, because the fire department training wages is for the call firefighters when they come in and they do train, and that covers medical training that we're required to do, fire training. If we have somebody that's new, sometimes there's a one-on-one where somebody will come in and spend a couple hours going over and honing skills with someone. And then it would also be for any new hires that would come in, to try and get them up to speed and get them down with the basics until that they could go to a certified training class.
And so those 200 hours associated with those three people, 65 hours or so per new hire, is that a requirement by law or statute that they have X number of those hours?
So those hours are for firefighter 1 level training at the state level. And those are, in order to be a certified firefighter in the state, those are hours that are required.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, to me, this is a hard one, because I want to make sure that our wonderful firefighters have the training, but I don't know. It's hard to balance what is the reality of going to be in the next several months of training.
Well, I just want to be clear here, right? That, if you're looking at my recommendations that I circulated, there's also a motion or a recommendation that I had under seminars and conventions,
Okay.
right? Which is also addressing some of the new hires that are coming on board with no training and how they really need to access that. I am not going to be making a motion on that line tonight. I can't speak for other committee members, but that's where I am looking at in terms of, budget. And there's another $12,000 in that line that helps cover some of that cost.
Right. So if you were preparing, if that's one of the ones that you're not necessarily moving forward with tonight, then that makes me more comfortable with this reduction.
I am not making a motion on that line tonight.
Right, because we have across the board been looking at seminars and conferences, understanding that as wonderful as training is, that just reality is a lot of it has gone virtual, so the costs have reduced. I appreciate that the fire department is trying to do as much in person as possible, but we also have to recognize reality that may not always be possible. So I think that the recommendation that's been made is a good balance between providing that training while also factoring in what's actually going to be available or possible even. So I'm comfortable with that.
And for clarification, Mr. Chairman, you are looking to reduce line 140, which is the overtime for, 149, which is the overtime for training, not touching the training wages, which are already built in for 28 members at 3 hours, correct? You're looking at the overtime line, line 149?
My math and where I had this put was 127, not 149.
Okay.
Ultimately, it's a bottom
I guess, Chief Nickel, that's part of where I have an issue is, we're paying wages for training, and training is important, but then also, we have overtime. And then we see the same thing on the police side of things later on. The overtime for training seems to me like poor scheduling. Can you explain in terms of why there's overtime necessary for training?
Sure. So myself, who's full-time, and Paul Kelly, who's our full-time paramedic firefighter, we work scheduled 40-hour work weeks. There's only the two of us, and then hopefully if a call comes in, we're augmented by our call firefighters. Particularly during the day, obviously, everybody else has their full-time jobs, and even if they're working at home virtual, we have a lot of members that have to stay at their desk, and do their work for their companies. So what the full-time overtime does is a couple different things. One of those are when we come back for mandatory training, that's what overtime is used for. We're required to keep up our EMT certification. So we have to take medical classes once a month with the rest of the department to keep our skills up, so that after 2 years, every 2 years, we have to recertify at the national level to be able to practice what we're doing. Our firefighter skills, we have to be able to keep our firefighter skills up. And even though we're full-time, we need to, where we're more senior than a lot of the call firemen and have, we do it for a living, we need to be able to evaluate the other call firefighters, because not everybody is at the same level of training. So when I go to a fire as a deputy fire chief, I need to be able to know who has what skills so that we can get a job done safely and bring everybody home at the end of the day. The full-time overtime also covers before and after hours. We have about 30% of the time, we have our bewitching hours from, say, 5 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock in the morning, where people are, going to work. And so a lot of times people won't respond to calls because they need to get ready for work or get their kids ready for school. We also have the hours from 3:30 in the afternoon. We work till 4, but we have two different things. From 3:30 until 6 o'clock at night, we can't guarantee who's in town as well. So Paul and I cover a lot of those calls. I mean, just this last week, I've gone to 3 calls early morning because nobody else goes. I don't go for the fact of making overtime. I wait because we have a system that shows us on an app who's actually responding. And if somebody's not going to the call, I make sure that I go to it to make sure that the call is covered. That could be for a medical call. That could be for a car accident. That could be for a structure fire. So that's all what the full-time overtime covers. If we start a call at 3:30 and we don't get back until 4:15, 4:20, again, it's after our scheduled hours, that's overtime. And we're very good about, if a call runs 5 or 10 minutes over, there's quite an awful lot of time we self-police, and we don't put in for it because we're not in for it for the money. We're more in for it for trying to cover the townspeople.
Just a question, and maybe I misunderstood Mr. Taylor's question. I was thinking he was referring to the overtime for training and not necessarily the overtime in response to calls. I think everything the chief said, I fully support and agree with. I do have a question as it pertains to the overtime for training and how that connects to the training wages. That seems to be I-
I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood the question. So full-time overtime training is specifically for medical training for our monthly EMS training. And it's also for our regular fire department training. I'm sorry, hopefully I clarified that. And then the regular full-time overtime is for what I was talking about, before and after hour calls and any classes that I need to go to, or meetings for the town. That also covers with the full-time overtime.
Mr. Sun, you were correct. I did specifically ask about the overtime training.
Okay. And maybe this could be me after a long day, just not fully understanding. So I apologize if that's the case. Is the overtime training firefighter, that line item 149, if I attend a training session as a firefighter and I receive a wage from line 127, am I also receiving an overtime from line 149 as well if that training occurs after hours?
No. So there's just two separate wages. So typically every week there's some sort of training. So every Wednesday my time is blocked out. The first Wednesday of the month I have an officers meeting that I'm required to go to. The second and fourth Wednesday is fire department training, and the third Wednesday is medical training. Typically the fire training is 3 hours. So that's every second and fourth Wednesday, and medical training is 3 hours. And then the officers meetings typically run 3 to 4 hours. But like I said, so every Wednesday there is something that overtime is used for.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, further discussion before we move it to vote.
Mr. Chairman, would you feel comfortable sharing what your bottom line reduction for this budget
Sure.
is?
Absolutely. So I am prepared for fire department as a whole. So 4220 across that entire budget, to make motions this evening in the amount of 7,115. 4,566 is exactly the motion at hand right now. And speaking to the chief, I feel very comfortable moving the fire department overtime line down by $2,500. The chief was amenable to that number. And then also mileage and tolls, we're going to set that from $50 to $1, which the chief was also amenable to.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any further discussion before we bring it to vote? All right. So the motion at hand is to reduce line 127 fire department training wages by 4,566. Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Douglas.
Aye.
Ms. Forty.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Aye.
Let's see. Mr. Hodgkins.
Aye.
Ms. Harrison.
Aye.
Mr. Sun.
Aye.
Mr. Hayes.
Yes, aye.
And I am also an aye. That carries 9-0-0. All right. I will make a motion to reduce line 140 fire department overtime by $2,500.
Second.
I'll second that.
Oh, we have a motion by myself, second by Ms. Douglas. Sorry, Mr. Hayes, should beat you to it.
He can have it. I'm okay.
You do take them all.
Well, I think if people put it forward, they should be allowed to discuss
No,
it.
I will yield to my neighbor.
All right. What a gentleman. And as mentioned, right, the discussion on this one, after a discussion for about an hour with the chief, this one we ultimately agreed to, and it felt that this was more of an appropriate number. Further discussion? All right, we'll do a vote. Mr. Taylor,
Aye.
Ms. Douglas,
Aye.
Ms. Forty,
Aye.
Mr. Leary,
Aye.
Mr. Hodgkins,
Aye.
Ms. Harrison,
Aye.
Mr. Sun,
Aye.
Mr. Hayes,
Aye.
and I am also an aye. That carries 9-0-0. That was an efficient vote. Thank you very much. All right, and one more motion for me is I'm going to move on the mileage and tolls line. This is line 810. I'm going to reduce it by $49.
Second. See, I waited a second there.
Motion by myself, second by Ms. Douglas. Discussion. Again, my thoughts are.
I wanted to second that.
I gave you a second. Like I literally waited.
Makes sense.
All right, further discussion? Seeing WebEx, seeing nobody. Okay, we'll bring it to vote. Mr. Taylor,
Aye.
Ms. Douglas,
I
Ms. Forty,
Yes.
Mr. Leary,
Aye.
Mr. Hodgkins,
Aye.
Ms. Harrison,
Aye.
Mr. Sun,
speed delay.
Aye.
Mr. Hayes,
Aye.
and I am also an aye. That also carries 9-0-0. All right, anything else on fire department?
I'd like to make a motion to reduce line number 430 by $2,000 to reduce the annual HVAC service and maintenance down to what the town has, which was $1,500 based on our last vote.
We have a motion by Mr. Taylor. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Ms. Douglas. Discussion.
No, now you can go ahead and little. So it had to do with what? I'm sorry.
HVAC.
HVAC.
Yes, no.
This one's 3,500. We just talked about the town at 1,500. Mr. Brown mentioned that this particular building here has 6 units. Is there more at the fire station that causes the higher cost of 3,500?
The system at the fire station is much more
Sophisticated, I would imagine.
elaborate than the system that's here. So I'm sure there's a lot more involved in doing the quarterly inspections and filter changes than there is in this building.
There's
This
also
one's more straightforward, basic, the 6 standalone units. But they're nothing like the units that are.
Yeah,
that are
weren't there
over
special like smoke evac areas for the jackets and stuff? There's like different kinds of levels over there. So
Okay, so
I like the thought process.
is
though.
the 3,500, and again, I think the chairman had brought it up when we went through the discussions, there just tends to be a lot of very round numbers in this particular budget. So I wanted to ensure that the 3,500 was based on estimates and past expenditures for servicing that particular building and not just randomly picking 3,500 compared to 1,500 here.
Yeah, next year at this time, we'll have a full year of actual cost. And, I do think we'll be in a better position to know exactly what it'll be, but.
The only question I would have is, would not the first year have been covered under the first year of service of the building, like as part of the warranty period?
Doug, I know you manage the building. I don't manage that building, and I know everything was under warranty the first year.
So Kerry, the warranty ran out, and they said that did not cover regular building maintenance.
Okay.
We did just have the same vendor that does all the other town buildings just recently went through all the systems. I don't know if that bill has been received and paid yet, but the work has been done.
Okay, and do you think you will? So would you also preserve a service contract, or would that fall under Mr. Brown to?
Well, that's what Mr. Brown and I have both been working on with this vendor. They're supposed to be getting us prices. They're very busy with what they're doing right now, that they haven't been able to do it, but we're trying to get fire department included, all the buildings all into a service contract with this provider.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Further discussion, please. All right, hearing none, we'll move it to vote. Mr. Taylor,
Nay.
Ms. Douglas,
No.
Ms. Forty,
No.
Mr. Leary,
No.
Mr. Hodgkins,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison.
No.
I got you. Mr. Sun.
No.
Let's see, Mr. Hayes.
No.
No, and I am also a no. That one fails. 180.
I appreciate the discussion though,
Absolutely.
which is why I second motions, because I don't like to see things die. Let them be discussed.
Note here. All right. Further discussion, motions on the fire department.
Mr. Chair, a motion, just a couple of comments just for the public. I do want to call out the spending on the thermal imaging camera as well as the replacement of radios and mobiles. I appreciate the board and the fire department looking at, revenue that was not being spent this year and purchasing some of those items in advance for next year. I think that's much appreciated. And I've been one, I think a lot like yourself, that's taken a hard look at seminars and conventions. I tend to lean with you on this one as well. After hearing the chief explain when we went through this budget that a lot of these do require a face-to-face component, whereas I think a lot of the seminars and conventions that we've talked about in the past provide that virtual opportunity. I tend to lean that this is one that we leave as is for right now. So just a couple of statements. Appreciate the thoughtful look at the equipment and feel good with the seminars and conventions where it is.
Thank you, Mr. Sun. Okay, let's move forward to fire hydrants.
Ugh.
I'm sure everyone wants to reduce this one.
Next.
Any conversation, motions on fire hydrants?
Get rid of penetration. No, I'm sorry.
Conversation for another day. Okay, hearing none. We will move into code enforcement, please. This is 4241. Any motions?
I have more of a point of clarification. We have line 110 is the salary for the code enforcement officer. And then there's on line 140, there's overtime. I'm assuming that's for the code enforcement officer. But if that's a salaried position, and does he also receive overtime?
No, that's just a mistake in vocabulary. It's an hourly position.
Thank you.
A question I would have on line 140 on the CE overtime, is there officer to do, let's say, an inspection in the evening hours and take comp time during the day, so not to extend over 40 hours. So, shedding that line or the need to pay overtime.
So
Doug,
Troy, I guess that's something, I'll let you answer.
defer to me.
Yeah.
So for this position, we've had, as the chief had described to you at the last time we went through this budget, we have overtime that we're starting to see we're experiencing overtime after hour type operations. So we've had some complaints that have come in where we've had to go out on a Friday night or Saturday or a Sunday, follow up on enforcement issues. We've had this individual attend zoning board of adjustment meetings, board of selectmen meetings. So that's kind of where the overtime is incurring. Not so much in the inspection work. We were able to manage the inspection work, but definitely enforcement part and then attending different boards and committee meetings as needed. So the difficult thing is here with compensatory time is that it's, if you take a look at compensatory time, that is, it really is something where an employee, if you read our personnel policy and you read, the federal laws, an employee will come and ask if they can receive compensatory time, and that needs to be pre-approved by the supervisor. Otherwise, the employer is obligated to pay the overtime rate. The compensatory time, if it's granted by the supervisor, is then required to be used at time and a half. And we're also required, if it's not used, to pay it out at the end of the year. So in this position, we're not in a position where we can actually ask an employee, well, we understand you went out Friday night and did extra work, and now you're going to take compensatory time. It's not something we as an employer have a right to demand an employee to do.
I can appreciate that. Can you help me understand where this number comes from, though, for this amount? Like where that estimate of how much we would need to cover overtime.
So Nikki, I can just tell you that when the chief and I sat down, there wasn't any overtime for this position. The previous building inspector was actually a department head before he was absorbed by the fire department.
Right.
So he was actually a salaried position. And then afterwards, when it went over, came over to us, it became because he was no longer a supervisor, it became an hourly thing, but there was never any overtime put to it. And I just want to add to what Mr. Brown was saying, that we have had a couple occasions already in the last year where we had an incident last year where a vehicle went through a building, and we had to have the building inspector come out at night in order to deem whether the building was safe to be occupied or not. So other than the regular code enforcement, the reason we added some money in there is just in the instance that there was an emergency that at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, we needed the building inspector to come out and look at something, that there was money for that. We don't expect it to happen that often, but there needs to be something there for that. And I believe the chief had it so that there's a few hours in there just in case.
It looks like a few more than a few, though. So I think that the question would be, what does that amount represent? Is that like,
Yeah, like was that a
is
set
that
number of hours?
2 8-hour days? Like I guess I would have to do the math to figure out what the hourly rate is and back it out. But if there was a way to figure that out.
I honestly don't know, Kerry.
45 hours.
The chief is the one that took care of that budget.
Okay. So, all right, you're right. So if temporary wages are about $25 an hour. I'm sorry, is that what you used?
I was using, if you did the
Yeah.
temp inspector at 25 an hour plus time and a half,
Okay.
and then backed it into the other
So
people.
it's about 45 hours.
Yep.
Is that 45 hours seem on target, or is it based on what we've already spent, or does that seem, because if somebody's coming out at 4 a.m. to look at an event, that's max probably 4 hours, because you probably get them for half a day. I don't know what your agreements are, but are we really going to have 10 of those events in a year, like one a month? That seems maybe a bit excessive.
Yeah, I'm calculating I read around 40 to 41 hours, but close enough.
I mean, because currently, based on the 1023 report, we are at less than 250 hours, unless $250, if I'm reading that correctly.
Yep.
So you're talking about significantly increasing over that, and I agree that the number that's budgeted is too high. I'm just not sure what number I'm actually comfortable with off the top of my head.
Yeah, I
Make a
understand the
motion.
need.
Okay, go for it.
Is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
By all means.
All right. I'd like to reduce line 140, code enforcement overtime, by $1,092, bringing it to $600, which would be double what the 2019 actual expense would be.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Taylor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sun. Discussion. Okay, hearing none, I'll bring it to vote. Mr. Taylor,
Aye.
Ms. Douglas,
Aye.
Ms. Forty,
Aye.
Mr. Leary,
No.
Mr. Hodgkins,
Aye.
Ms. Harrison,
No.
Mr. Sun,
Aye.
Mr. Hayes.
Aye.
And I am also an aye. That carries 7-0. Okay. Anything else on code enforcement?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to reduce line 811, seminars and conventions. I'd like to reduce that one by $1,000.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Sun. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Sun, a second by Ms. Douglas. Discussion.
So I know in looking at your recommendation, you had suggested about 50%. I kind of pulled back from that a little bit just based on looking at the spend for this year as well as the 3-year average. I feel like, $1,000 reduction puts us fairly close in line as to what the spend is already for this year, as well as around that 3-year average as well. That was my rationale. And also obviously looking at the reduction based on a lot of these sessions either being virtual or potentially not being offered in 2021.
My understanding was that for this position, these were trainings required that this individual needed to meet the full, what does it say? Meet the position requirements. This was a little different than the training in other departments. Is that correct?
Doug, I'll go ahead, Doug. That is correct. When this individual was hired, in the part of the agreement in the hiring offer or job description, there's certain levels of certifications that's required to be achieved within a certain time period. And what the chief has done in putting together this budget is laid out the cost of those courses over the next 12 months. I'm not sure really how much COVID will have an impact on his ability to get to this training. I know that he's been doing training all along with a lot of the virtual courses that are available through the International Code Council. So I don't see there being, this is a big organization, agency throughout the country that the code specialists require. They need to maintain the certification, and for all those new people coming into the field, I see this this training continuing to be offered.
So a follow-up question to that, either to Mr. Brown or to Doug, that ICC certification that you're referring to, is that line item that's budgeted for that, the $2,500, is that just for the course itself, or is that including, assuming that we're being offered face-to-face travel associated with that?
There's a vehicle assigned to this department, so there's no travel involved.
And also, just to add in, so the ICC classes is different modules that can be done. And even though it's virtual, there are charges for the courses. Some of them have been canceled this year because of COVID. Others they still offer. And as Mr. Brown said, the code enforcement officer every week is taking classes online. He's constantly looking, and if one of these modules comes available, he's signing up for them. And he has been taking as many classes as he can, because the ICC, as it is in good times, takes a couple of years in order to get full certification with all the classes that are required.
So is this a full-time position?
Yes.
So we factored in that we would, so the employment package, when we offered it, factored in the cost of bringing him to the certifications he needed. So once he gets to those certifications, are we going to expect to see a significant jump in the salary? Because we can't force him to stay, right? So based on previous discussions, I'm just thinking, that's not a bad deal. We pay for him to get trained. He gets the requirements, and then we're going to pay him because now he's qualified for it.
That would be a point of discussion.
So,
I think that's a risk that all employers take in public sector and private.
we've had this discussion every year. Private is able to actually recoup some of the costs if you leave before you're fully vested, but it doesn't seem to be an option in public sector. So
What? Say that to me again.
If-
Private
if-
sector does what?
if I had left my employer before 2 years, I would have had to pay back a significant amount of sum that they invested in my education. Do we have an ability to recoup those types of investments?
We do not have those agreements.
Yes. So, I mean, the cost is the cost. There's not much we can do about it. I would just encourage the selectmen as they negotiate further to factor in
I think,
those types of things.
I think in the interest of time, I think it's important to move this one to a vote, and see how it shakes out. Okay, so with that, I'll call the vote. Mr. Taylor,
Aye.
Ms. Douglas. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, my only question to make a decision is, have the certifications changed between last year and this year to justify $1,000? I mean, because it's required. If it's required, it's required. But I just don't understand the $1,000 increase.
It's a
on bond.
several year process to get all of the,
Right, but it was the same guy
required.
last year.
they're different trainings. It's not going to be the same modules.
So I'm
I
gonna
think
have,
from what I
Well,
heard,
I'm
what I
sorry,
understood.
We're over the discussion period. So Ms. Douglas, yea or nay?
no,
Ms. Forty,
No,
Mr. Leary,
No.
Mr. Hodgkins,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
No,
Mr. Sun,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Aye.
and I am a no on this one. So that motion fails 4-5-0. Okay. Additional discussion, motions.
I'd like to make a motion to reduce line 560 dues, licenses, and subscriptions by $4,000.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Taylor. I will second it. Mr. Taylor, go ahead.
If the increase going from the 1,000 to 5,000 is due to upgrading the program up to something different, and we can live with the current system as is, I think with the fact that we're going to see 20% less in revenues from the state, this wouldn't be a wise move to make that migration to a newer service. And if it's because the existing service provider is going to jack up the price that high, I would question doing business with that type of provider.
so this was to digitize, right? To make this an electronic.
No, we've already purchased this software.
Yeah.
And we didn't have an online permitting software prior. So this reflects what the $4,000 reflects the annual licensing cost and support for that software. We've already purchased it. It's in place. It's been extremely valuable throughout. As soon as they were able to purchase and install and train the staff on the software, COVID hit. And I can tell you right now, out there, the private homeowners and all the contractors, we've received positive feedback having this program available to them.
So then my question would be then, if this is to directly benefit the permitting process and the cost of permitting from the town has increased, have we also increased the cost to the homeowners through the permitting fee?
Right, and that's
That's
exactly
a
what
point
I
of discussion
asked
by the
when we did
board. I
this.
don't think that's worth a debate this evening. I know it's still under discussion.
Well, no, but on the thing is, we're going to discuss revenues, right? So it would affect the revenues number.
So let's talk about it with revenues.
But we are looking at permit,
Okay.
increasing permit
It's
fees.
just that's the exact question I had when we went over this budget. And they have to have a public hearing and everything
Okay.
for the new fee schedule.
That's right. Yep. All right, hearing no more comments, I'll move it to vote. Mr. Taylor,
Nay.
Ms. Douglas,
No.
Ms. Forty,
No.
Mr. Leary,
No.
Mr. Hodgkins,
No.
Ms. Harrison,
No.
Mr. Sun,
No.
Mr. Hayes,
No.
and I am also a no. That one fails. 0-9. Okay. I will make a motion to reduce printing. This is line 550, excuse me, by $100.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. My discussion being, this is one that I just believe is over budgeted, and I think $100 on this better aligns it to historical spend. Move it to vote. Mr. Taylor,
Aye.
Sorry.
Ms. Douglas,
Aye.
Ms. Forty,
No. We're already over.
Mr. Hodgkins,
Aye.
Ms. Harrison,
No.
Mr. Sun,
No.
Mr. Hayes,
Aye.
and I am also an aye. That carries. Did I miss somebody?
You missed me.
Oh, Mr. Leary, I'm sorry.
I'm a no.
No. Motion carries 5-4-0. Anything else on code enforcement this evening? Okay, hearing none. Let's move into emergency management, please. 4290. Any motions, discussion, comments on emergency management tonight?
I mean, okay, I am, is this the one I'm looking on? Yes. So as a follow-up to the discussion when we did have, is this related to COVID or was it we just evaluated the amount we spent and decided we were under budgeted? So we had discussed last time regarding the discussion of COVID and whether or not that would be like once COVID's done with, then we'd no longer need it, the potential to do a warrant article to create a fund, or whether or not this actually represented the amount of money that we should have on hand on an annual basis for emergencies. So I just see the notes that still reference COVID, so I'm curious as to how that shook out.
So we've not had a discussion on whether or not we would create a expendable trust fund for this purpose. And I think the general feedback to this committee is it's $1,500, whether it's COVID related or any other type of emergency situation. It's there for assistance in providing whatever we need during those emergency situations until the federal funds are available.
Okay. Anything else on emergency management?
Really have spent.
Okay. Hearing none, we will move into police. I know Chief Sergeant is with us tonight. We will start with 4210. And Deputy Chief Nicola, I just wanted to take a moment and thank you for joining. You're welcome to obviously listen in. We appreciate your presentation of the budgets and everything that you and the chief have done for the budget committee this season. Thank you again.
Oh, great. Thank you. Everybody have a good night.
Night.
As well, sir. Thank you. Stay well. So for police administration, 4210, let me get there myself. Let me get here. Sorry, all these things I have to click. Okay, so for police administration, I know we have Chief Sergeant on the line with us. Before we get into tonight's budget with the review of the police department, I just want to highlight a couple things. One is that, when the Board of Selectmen began this process for zero-based budgeting, I know Chief Sergeant, as well as a few other department heads, really took that seriously. They went through every line item. They put together a very straightforward and rational budget. I know our committee members thanked Chief Sergeant during the initial presentation, and I just want to take a moment to highlight that this budget is actually down year over year by currently, if I'm looking at the Google sheet here, by $14,440. So that represents a decrease between this current year that we're preparing for and FY20. In addition to that, there were some actions taken just as a reminder to the committee. There was an ask for 2 administrative vehicles that came out of the budget and was purchased with FY20 operating budget funds. So that helped reduce the tax cap as well. With that, also, I had a discussion with the chief on some budget items and recommendations. My thoughts have somewhat changed. And so what I'd like to do is just, turn it over to the chief first for just general comments, and then, we'll get into voting. Chief Sergeant.
Thank you, Chairman Cutter. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you and the respected board members tonight. I want to let the board know that I did have a great conversation with the chairman. Really evaluated some of his questions, concerns, and thoughts about our budget, which again gave me the opportunity to go through, fine comb, and really identify if there's any other savings that we could give to the taxpayers, while also justifying some points that I think are really important for us to perform and give our townspeople the best service, because they deserve it. You folks deserve it. I've been happy to work with Captain Scotty with multiple grants in my first year as the chief of police. We received approximately $12,000 in warm zone grant money that would have been in this budget. We received tactical vests, tourniquets, other equipment that each year we were asking for thousands of dollars to get up to speed to obtain this equipment. And through applying for these grants, we were able to not come forward and help reduce our budget. I also want to highlight that we recently received a grant for radio equipment, again, which will allow us to make purchases this year. And again, it was approximately $4,000. And that's the direction that we're looking to go, is to pursue all avenues, grants, reductions, changing of schedules, to make sure that we're operating fiscally as responsible as we can. So I'm really excited with the budget. I'm happy to address any questions or concerns. And I also just want to thank you for your support of the department and working with me with this budget process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chief. With that, I will turn it over to the committee for comments, motions, questions, etc.
Yeah, I had a question as a point of reference. When it comes to, you said that the town took out of the 2020 budget money saved to buy 2 vehicles, correct? And what were the costs of those vehicles?
The total amount of the, oh, go ahead, Chief, sorry.
No, go ahead, Mr. Cutter, go ahead.
I was just going to say the total reduction for the 2 was $62,835, so right around $31,000 in total, but that also includes outfitting, is my understanding, for each of the vehicles.
So what you're saying is the town had enough money left over from its budget of not spending what they're asking for, and had enough money to buy 2 vehicles. So when we're cutting these budgets and the town's acting like, well, we're cutting the floor out from underneath them, if they have that kind of money left over, we're really not cutting them that bad.
So, Mr. Hodgkins, just for a point of reference, and it's an important thing to understand, and I thank you for your question. At the beginning of COVID, back in March, April, the town, along with the select board, directed all department heads to immediately stop excess spending. And that's why throughout the entire budget this year, you see many of the expense accounts across general supplies, across many different line items that are not expended like we anticipated going into this budget year because of the pandemic. Seminars and conventions is a great line, and mileage and tolls as well, as we talked about as a committee. The savings across all of the various lines across the entire budget at the beginning of the budget season, right, was right around, I estimated to be somewhere in the $250,000 range, right? And so that is essentially $250,000 that remains in the operating budget, unexpended, but as a result of the blocking of expenses made by the select board, the town administrator, as well as the department heads. Out of that 250,000 approximate, there have been decisions made to pull monies out that otherwise would have been requested in fiscal year 21. One of those items originally in the budget was for the purchase of 2 administrative vehicles, Chevy Traverses, for the department. Not a replacement of Tahoes and the 212 cycle or the 111 cycle, whichever way we go going forward. This would be an off year, but to use that money to purchase 2 administrative vehicles, which the chief felt the need to have. The board authorized that about a month and a half or so ago at this point, and the town acquired 2 vehicles using those excess funds. The $62,835 was directly attributed to specifically the savings within the police department from this current year's budget. Chief Sergeant, anything to add on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd actually refer to you to speak to the budget for the rest of the evening here. I appreciate that insight. But no, I would like to add, and Mr. Hodgkin, thank you. That's a very valid question. In addition to those savings in what Mr. Cutter highlighted, I have been significantly short-staffed this year. So as we look at a bottom line budget, I had 1 officer who has been deployed the entire year. His salary is approximately $65,000 to $68,000. So due to his military obligations, we did not have to pay out those monies for his salary. As we started coming into the budget season, I recognized the monies that were available in the salary line because of being short at 6 months of the time, 2 officers, and currently 3 officers short. So we had a significant saving in salary. So as we look at the bottom line budget, I recognized that I had extra money. I was going to present the 2 administrative vehicles in this budget for 2021. I prepared a memorandum to Town Administrator Brown, and I presented to the Board of Selectmen and said, I could purchase these vehicles this year with money that were budgeted for salary. And if you go to the bottom line, I'm still good. I can still return money. So it's not that there was extra fluff. It's not that we have so much fat that we can say, hey, this is a red flag. What I would tell you is because the officer and there were officer vacancies, that we were able to repurpose those monies to help take the burden off of the 2021 budget tax cap hit. And at one point we were talking, in excess of 70,000+ without health insurance benefits and whatnot. And that is why I acted on that. That is why I dissected our budget. I identified that these monies are here and was given authorization to move forward with the purchases of those 2 vehicles.
No, I appreciate your explanation. I guess my concern is it seems to be across, I guess, all the town, and I don't know if it affects the school too, but when there's money left over, instead of money going back to the people that are paying that money in, it goes back to those departments. They're like, well, how can I spend this? And that attitude, I'm against.
I think we find ourselves in a unique situation where COVID did affect a lot of things. And so if we return the money, all of it, yes, some money should go back, but we have to recognize that those are expenses that are going to hit next year. We're going to have training. If we refund all that money, it artificially depresses the taxes. So the next time you get a massive increase. So to use some of those funds for one-time expenses levels out the tax impact and doesn't result in a massive shock, because that money has to eventually be paid for because it's coming back. So I agree with you in philosophy. We don't want to over budget, but at the same point, it's not like these were our expenses that are going away for a structural reason. It's just it was a natural disaster, God kind of thing. Whereas we're still going to have the other expenses. So you don't want to depress it, because then when you get your tax bill, or you're even worse, your escrow adjustment, and all of a sudden your mortgage goes up $2,500 to make up for this huge increase, it's going to hurt.
Well, and I would add that the town actually, had a responsibility when they delivered us the budget officially at the beginning of last week. They needed to deliver us a budget that was below the tax cap, not above the tax cap, right? And so events like this, with one-time expenditures like this, using excess funds, in my view, is responsible, because it presents us and delivers us a budget that's below the tax cap out of the gate. All right, so with that, any further comments or discussions or motions?
No, I do thank Chief Sargent for adjusting that one line item we discussed last week for the child advocacy. I saw that was adjusted in the spreadsheet. So thank you for taking care of that. Otherwise, I rarely praise any of the department heads, but I'm very pleased with this one. It's unusual to see a budget from the police department that comes in with actually a decrease this year. Usually we see huge increases, almost six figures. So thank you for all the hard work that you and Mr. Brown and the rest of your staff put into this, because this, to me, is definitely indicative of all the hard work and the effort and the consideration for the taxpayers and the things they're going through. So thank you for that. Thank you for all the effort. It is noticed and it's appreciated.
Well, thank you, Ms. Douglas. It's my honor. Thank you very much.
So with that, I am prepared to make a motion here. I'm going to make a motion on office supplies. This is specifically line 120 or 620, excuse me, and I'm going to make a motion to reduce that by $600.
I will second it for your discussion.
Douglas? Yeah, and so after discussion with the chief, we felt collectively that this $600 was an okay reduction to the budget. I know the chief was obviously trying to convince me, for lack of a better term, right, that funding is needed for the budget. However, I think for office supplies, it really is a best estimate, and ultimately the chief was okay with a $600 reduction to that line.
I believe you said 610. So do you mean 610 is general? Is that general supplies, or are you doing 620 office supplies?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's line 620.
I mean, I could be tired and totally spacing out, but I thought.
Me too. It's been a long day. So line 620, the motion is to reduce it by $600.
So you're taking the chairs away.
I'm seeing AED pads and batteries. Those are kind of important chairs. I like you guys, but.
Chief Sergeant, go ahead.
So all I'd like is the board to know, and I think I highlighted this with you, Chairman Cutter. The initial proposed budget was reduced by $400,
right,
and that would have reflected a 10% reduction from the 2020 budget. So I want you to know that I really did consider, what I thought was important and what was necessary. And I agree 100% with the chairman's statement that we can get by with this cut, but I do want you to know I did make a reduction, and I just wanted to highlight that for the citizens and the rest of the board members.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. Okay, further discussion.
No, thank you for having that discussion. So it makes my vote easier.
All right, I'll bring it to vote. Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Douglas?
Aye.
Ms. Forty?
Aye.
Mr. Leary?
No.
Mr. Hodgkins?
Aye.
Ms. Harrison?
No.
Mr. Sun,
Aye.
Mr. Hayes,
Aye.
and I am also an aye. That carries 7-0. Okay, anything else with police administration? Hearing none, we will move into police support services, and this is line 4210, please. Any comments, motions, questions on police support?
So I just had a question with line 140, which is the overtime for the dispatcher. So I know that it's level funded from last year, but we did have a reduction in the number of pay periods. Would that at all affect the need for the same amount of overtime? Because we went from the 53 to the 52 weeks. Just wondering what the rationale was for keeping that level.
Yeah, I think last year you would note that there was a reduction. The motion was made by Chairman Cutter, and we reduced it by approximately $2,500 to $3,000. I felt comfortable with that $10,000 overtime for police dispatchers. Historically, we're tending to run around $8,900 to $9,000. And I felt the level funding was appropriate. I didn't think the extra week made a difference in terms of someone taking more time off. I think, where these dispatchers are trending is they have their normal vacations that they do. It seems that very consistent with the time they take off. Certainly this year, some vacations were canceled, but I did not believe that dropping from a 53 week to a 52 week with 2 full-time employees would affect that overtime line at all.
Okay. Thank you.
In my view, I think we can get away with a $500 reduction in this line, but curious what other thoughts are from members.
I can support that, Mr. Chairman.
Well,
Okay, I'll make a motion to reduce line 140 by $500.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Bring it to vote. Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Douglas?
aye.
Ms. Forty?
Aye.
Mr. Leary?
Aye.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Mr. Hodgkins?
You just wanted me to say it again.
Thumbs up? Mr. Hodgkins? Thumbs up. Thank you. Ms. Harrison?
Aye.
Mr. Sun?
Aye.
Mr. Hayes? Mr. Hayes?
I'm sorry, I was not sleeping. It's an aye.
Aye, thank you. And I am also an aye. That carries 900. Anything else on police support this evening? Okay, let's move into animal control 4414, please. Any comments, questions, motions from the board?
List.
No? Okay, hearing none, we will move into personnel administration. And with that, that also concludes the police presentations this evening and the police budget. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate you joining and walking through the budget once again. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members. Stay safe and stay healthy. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Chief.
Thank you. So personnel administration, and this is line 4155. Comments, questions, motions? Okay, hearing none, we can move into the review of preliminary revenue estimates. I believe that concludes all the town voting, and now we're going to get into the revenue and default budget calculations if there's anything to talk about on those fronts. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Brown.
You got everything covered? Oh, it's hidden. You should be able to see it now, revenues.
Might have to refresh.
It just popped up.
I can see revenues on my side, yes.
There we go.
Okay, have we reviewed these already or,
Quickly we did.
I think
We did initially review them, yeah. So I don't
Okay.
know if there's any updates you want to share tonight for the revenues. I know there was a discussion earlier this evening on the permitting. Maybe it makes sense just to have that quick discussion here at this point.
Okay.
Et cetera.
So if I start off with the permitting, that you don't see anything projected at this point in time in our revenues. We still have time if the Board of Selectmen adopt a new fee schedule for building permits. There is time to be able to update the revenue projections for 2021. The building inspector has presented to the board modification to the existing fee schedule. We think that if it's adopted, it could result in $25,000 of new revenue source to the town. But there's a process that needs to go through. Obviously, the Board of Selectmen needs to be very comfortable and support the changes that are being recommended. And after that, there's a legal process where we're required to have a public hearing and give formal notice of the proposed changes. But that we're hopeful that we're going to go through that process and we'll have the outcome will be in place if any action is taken whatsoever prior to the first of the year, which gives us time to update the revenues if that's the way the vote goes. The big thing here is, you see, when you're doing revenues, we sat down just a few weeks ago when we were sitting down and doing our taxes, we're just setting the new tax rate. And we actually go through our revenues and they're updated with numbers that the DRA gives us. So you can see that they almost represent the same numbers that we just set a few weeks ago. Some of the projections on motor vehicle permit fees, I mentioned this the last time we reviewed it. Based on what we're looking at, I do believe that we're going to see an increase of $50,000 in vehicle permit fees. I understand there's some concerns about the economy, but we are just simply not seeing any changes in this category. Revenue from the state, you've heard me talk about the municipal aid shared revenues that you see a reduction of $71,689. And that was a reduction because that was a one-time payment last year. And it came in the form of municipal aid. And it's really discretionary at the state level whether that's going to be awarded to towns or not. And it's all based on the amount of surplus funds the state has. We haven't received municipal aid in several years, so that was a nice funding to receive. We put 100% of it into our roads. The room and meals tax, what I've done is decreased it over last year by 20%. And so you can see that reduction is $87,380. That is a number that some of our neighboring communities and the municipal world that I've seen on our distribution lists, this is what the bigger towns are going with. There is most likely nobody is going to, no state official and no entity is going to come out and really tell us what we should expect. So everyone, seems to be the general consensus was they're looking at a 20% reduction. The highway roadblock is down 14,398. We just had the block grant set when we did our tax rate at 204,398. So I am projecting that we're going to see a continued decrease in this line. That would be directly related to, the COVID impact of sales of fuel products. And the other adjustments are some of those things that we talked about with planning board, zoning board, just trying to offset those revenues. In the operating budget, we budget the gross amount, and then we offset it with the anticipated revenues we'll receive from applicants. So one of the things that's new this year, this is really important for everyone to understand. At this point in time, the Board of Selectmen, knowing we had some issues with the tax cap, at the time we set this revenue, we decided that we would use $87,380 from the unassigned fund balance for the first time as a revenue source to help address the shortfall of revenues. We've not done that before. The thought process is that this is a really good use of the unassigned fund balance, and it's what it's intended for. It's not intended to just create new revenue so that we would actually start depleting the fund because it becomes part of a new revenue stream. We believe that once we get through COVID, we're hopeful that we're going to start seeing things going back to normal, and we can rely less on the unassigned fund balance to help stabilize the tax rate. So.
Comments, questions for Mr. Brown on revenue?
So, Mr. Brown, there was an article in the Nashua Telegraph this past week about the CARES funding. And if I'm looking at this correctly, as far as the town by town distribution, it has on here for an allocation of $203,760. Is that included as far as the revenues to help offset some of the rooms and meals tax?
That I didn't see that article, but I'm assuming that is that article.
So the article
saying that those funds would be coming in 2021, or those are the funds that were just awarded to us.
Let's
the
see.
number that we just awarded. So the $203,000 was allocated to the town of Litchfield. We have received 100% of those funds. We've submitted 3 applications for reimbursement, and we have 100% of those in hand. And those have been added to the 2020 budget, and it does assist us with the surplus that we are projecting of about $180,000 this year. It won't have as far as an impact in 2021, it will not have it other than our ability to remove some of those items. We talked about in the police department, but some of those portable radio equipment in the fire department, police department, in the IT department. That's where that funding is coming from, that source as well.
I mean, you're also indirectly getting it through your use. It makes you more comfortable to use the unassigned fund balance.
Yeah.
So even though it's, you're getting the CARES money, we may not get direct because there were expenses associated with that. Some of it went to the first responders for their bonuses. Yeah. It's not like it was, $1 in, $1 for the taxpayer. There were actually expenses that were directly associated with or for which they were intended to be expended. So I think the use of the unexpended fund balance in this sense makes sense, and I'm glad that we were willing to consider that. So thank you for being creative in your ways of trying to, again, flatlining it more than necessarily having a huge spike of tax increase than to level it off. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on revenues? Hearing none. I know we had also the default budget, which we already viewed. Just to conclude, any questions on default budget as of this moment? Okay, before moving or closing town business, one thing I'd like to share with the committee, I'm going to share my screen here. If I can get this to work. There we go. Hopefully everyone can see. It might be kind of small, but this is just really a quick summary. So for those in the town that are following along and for the committee members, this is the set Excel file that I've been managing and reconciling the town budget to. This is representative of all the town accounts that we've now reviewed and taken initial voting actions on. And just to conclude in terms of voting, between the actions taken last week as well as tonight, we have reduced the budget by a total of $48,692, right? $34,686 was actioned last week, plus $14,006 this evening, for a total of $48,692. What that does to the overall bottom line of the budget is it reduces it now to $7,210,083, which, if I flip over to my next sheet, represents about a 2% increase. When we were initially presented the budget several weeks ago, we were at a 3.2% increase through the various reductions made by both the select board and pre-purchasing some items, as well as the actions by the committee. It's down about 1.2% from when we initially received it. Just in terms of tax cap, I think I'm following along here on the Google Sheets. I think Troy, Mr. Brown, you and Karen, you guys have made the adjustments and the motions to that live budget. Is that correct?
We have, I think we missed a couple adjustments, and that's why our bottom line doesn't match yours right now, but it's because we've not, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so we're right around $60,000 approximately underneath the tax cap at this moment.
And so, Mr. Carter, just to want to make everyone aware so that we're not surprised, we just started open enrollment with our health insurance and dental insurance. And so this is that time of the year over the next couple of weeks when we will learn if someone is changing their plan, you know, if they're electing to go to a family to a two-person, downgrade their plan to a point of service, I mean, an HMO or whatever. So, you know, we'll keep you informed of any adjustments, whether they go up or down in that area. We did just recently learn, and in this budget, we did have someone go from a buyout to a family plan. So there's some increase there, but otherwise these numbers, they're pretty solid at this point in time.
Minus the police contract as well, correct?
Minus the police contract, and we still have those health agencies.
Yep. Okay, great. Anything else for the town tonight before we move it over to Ms. Harrison for a school update?
I have one question for Mr. Brown, and it's in regards to the tax cap calculation. Looking at the overlay of $30,000, is that expected to change? In previous years, it was around $60,000.
So in previous years, we've had some utility abatement applications. We've had Pinnachuck, we've had Eversource, and that's why you saw a larger amount carried. Also, with the update that we just went through here, doing the townwide valuation, that's why you saw last year carrying the 60,000. So I'm hoping that going forward, that the 30,000 number you'll start to see the 30,000 being carried pretty much every year. Maybe it even comes down. I mean, you kind of get a better handle on how many abatements we actually grant.
Good. Sounds like you're confident. So obviously that would affect the tax cap. So that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, Mr. Brown, Aaron, thank you so much for your help over the last several weeks. Hopefully this wasn't too bad of a review process for you. Hopefully we tried to keep it nice and efficient and streamlined. And I thank you again for all of your help and support along the way.
Thank you very much.
Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Harrison for an update on the school side.
All right. Budget work has begun in earnest, and I believe the business administrator is finishing, and the superintendent are finishing up their meetings with department heads to go through a department review process. The board expects to have the reviewed budget, the superintendent's budget on Friday, so we can review it over the weekend, and then we begin our review session on November 5th with the budget committee, hopefully in attendance too. So that's kind of where we are right now. Plans are set for, we're going to be meeting in the CHS auditorium. Believe we start at 6:30, but Michelle can probably confirm that. I have it marked as 6:30. I'm not sure if it's 6 or 6:30. Okay. LCTV will be on site to record and broadcast the meeting. The plan is, I believe, to go through, Corey and the superintendent have set the agenda. So there'll be typically there's an overview at the beginning and then we dive into the departments. I believe we are doing the school budgets, week 1, GMS, LMS, and CHS, and then the smaller departments on November 10th. And then you'll get the school board approved budget as soon as possible after our meeting on the 10th. I know Corey is planning to do live updates. So, and he'll have the budget projected on the screen, just like we had in our, with our Google Doc with the town, and we'll go through and see those updates as they happen.
Great, thank you very much. I know Ms. Harrison and I had some email exchange just on logistics and coordination regarding the upcoming meetings for the school side of the house. I also know that it was mentioned by Chairman Burke at the time at your last school board meeting about some questions about budget committee involvement during the review process. And I just want to reiterate the fact that during the November 5th and Tuesday, November 10th sessions, these are school district led sessions that the budget committee is simply participating in and listening in on. It's not to interfere with their process. We'll have our chance at that during our following meetings on November 12th and November 19th to really get into it. It's really just to understand the budget requests, the district priorities, and then just to hear, the rationale from the various department heads when they meet, so they don't have to represent the same material to the budget committee. So again, it's our way of trying to streamline and create a little bit of efficiency in the process for all involved. And hopefully it sets us up for success on November 12th and November 19th to dive in, and then voting in early December, right after the Thanksgiving break on the 3rd and the 10th.
Yeah, typically we've had, when we've had our long budget workday sessions on Saturdays, we've opened it up to public input after each department as we kind of close out that department. So I assume that there will be opportunities for questions or input at that point. So, but that's all set up by the superintendent and the BA. I haven't seen the official agenda yet.
Great. So in terms of a meeting agenda, I'll circulate the fact that we are going to meet as a committee. Technically, we will all be together, although we will be participating predominantly in a listen mode only during the next 2 sessions with the school.
Sounds good.
Any questions? Everyone cool with the plan? Thumbs up? All right.
That is a great plan.
Let's hope it works according to the plan, right? Obviously, there's a little bit of risk and concern, which I've already highlighted to Ms. Harrison. Obviously, after the November 10th meeting and then our review beginning November 12th, it's a very short turnaround for any handover of the budgets, both hard and soft copy, and of course, any analysis that would need to be done. So that is a very tight turnaround, and I'll make a commitment to the committee to get it done as soon as possible. All right, anything else on the school side? All right, so moving into member input, new business. Anything from the committee tonight?
Right, I have something to say, Andrew, if you don't mind.
Please, Ms. Harrison.
At the last meeting, we got into a discussion about the creation of a new position in the town budget. And I just wanted to kind of clarify where I was coming from, bringing that to light. I think my comments weren't in the spirit of collaboration and teamwork that I'm trying to portray. So I just want to let Mr. Selectman Larry and Mr. Brown know that I fully support the Board of Selectmen's authority to create new positions and hire people as needed. You know, I think the legislative bodies in the town are elected to these positions to do exactly that. We are, you know, we have a bird's eye look of what the situation is in our town, and our school district, and we're best suited to know what is needed at that time. So I do think that, you know, I understand that the concern is that, you know, we're slipping things into the budget, or that the Board of Selectmen was putting that in there without it going to a warrant. But I think with the increased flow of information that we have nowadays and the transparency, I think we're still, you know, the legislative boards are still accountable to taxpayers. And I appreciate the need and the desire to do our jobs and as we're, you know, elected to do. So I just wanted to make that clear.
That is appreciated. Again, I will reiterate that it's not a new position, though. It is a position that was already in the budget and funded. We just shifted it to a part-time position versus a contracted position. So, and
I'm sorry, Bob. I did misspeak on that. You're right. And I think that, you know, given the scope of that job, of that position, and I think the change is warranted and necessary, and you're well within your rights to do that. And I fully support that.
because I'm the first one that bitches and cries about new positions not going to warrant, and which I did
know.
last year with the town,
Okay.
with the town
Well,
last year, with the
and
highway
I know,
department.
and I know
So-
you and I, you've gone, you know, we've kind of gone round and round about this from the Board of Selectmen and then with the school district. And I think moving forward, you know, I think we're all on the same page and we're all on the same team, and we're all trying to make this work the best way we can.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anything else for member input, new business? Okay, hearing none, we'll move it into public input. Let me just scan here. I don't see that anyone from the public has joined the WebEx. So I will close public input and we will move into adjournment. I'll entertain a motion.
So made.
Motion by Ms. Douglas, second by Mr. Hayes. I heard it.
Yes, that's right. You did, you heard it.
I gotcha. And we'll move it to vote.
You didn't
Mr.
wait
Taylor,
this time.
Aye.
Ms. Douglas,
Aye.
Ms. Forty,
Aye.
Mr. Leary.
I'd like to do this a little more. Aye.
Mr. Hayes,
Now, let me think about it. Yes.
Mr. Hodgkins, Ms. Harrison.
What are we voting on again?
I don't know. I forgot. It's been a long night. Mr.
Sure.
Sun,
Why not?
Yeah.
we were voting on that new position that we're adding to the budget.
Oh, too soon.
I think we're voting to reduce the salary for each one of us.
I'm teasing, by the way. And I'm also an aye. We are adjourned. That passes 9-0-0. Thank you all. We reconvene next Thursday for a school budget review session. Have a good night.
Thank you all.
Good night, everybody.